Hello and welcome to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging field of data science. We bring the best minds in data, software engineering, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Now here are your hosts, Frank Lavinia and Andy Leonard.
Hello and welcome to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging fields of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. If you like to think of data as the new oil, then you can consider us Car Talk, because we focus on where the rubber meets the road. And on this epic road trip down the information superhighway, I need a better cliche to start the show. Is with me, as always, is Andy Leonard.
Hey Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been, I know, in the kind of the virtual green room, you said you've had quite a day. I've had quite. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I was just saying I have, but you've had a day as well. You were sharing with me.
Right. So we're going to start this off with a little bit of sad news, and for that, I'm going to use the little dramatic music we have.
That is dramatic,
isn't it? It's kind of sad.
It is. Yeah.
So after 30 years of being in production, I think it's actually 33 years, MSDN Magazine is ceasing operations in November.
Darn it.
I know. I'm shocked. Well, I mean, I found out yesterday, but I couldn't tell anyone.
Right.
But
right. Well, I saw the tweet, and I kind of, I retweeted the announcement today. We're recording this on the 2nd of August, 2019.
We're getting earlier between like record and launch. This is it's almost like we're mature adults again.
My goodness. Yeah. We had a good run going there for a while. I think we can get back to it. It's it's a combination of habit and discipline.
Right. We're getting there.
We'll get back. But man, yeah, MSDN. So I know you wrote, most recently, you wrote the artificially intelligent column. Right. I mentioned in my tweet that I didn't have, as far as I know, I don't think I ever had anything published in MSDN. But I did get credit for doing some of the technical editing.
Oh yeah, you did a lot of the technical editing, actually.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and I got to tell folks, I imagine those archives are going to be around for a while, but just in case, if you
might want to print them
if you've got access. Yeah, I would go out with the screen scraper here and grab as much of that as you can. It was, but I learned an awful lot, Frank, about data science. That was a lot of my introduction to data science was doing the technical edits on your articles there for artificially intelligent.
Cool, man. Thanks. And it's between that and the show, whenever I go somewhere, people recognize me for that, which is it's a nice feeling,
Cool.
Because writing can be there's a reason why, if you look at like famous writers like Hemingway, Hunter Thompson, and I'm sure scores of others, there's a reason why they slowly go insane. And not that I have, but like there's definitely been moments when you're writing, and you've written. I think I only have one book to my name. You have at least a dozen from 2018, I think. I don't know what your body count is, your book count for 2019 is, but
it's going to kind of depend. I've slacked off. I haven't had anything go live since 2017, but that year was I had 3 titles, published. And what I'm hoping to do is I have 5 now in the works. One of them I'm pretty sure I'm not going to participate in, although it breaks my heart to not. I'm not going to mention it but I will mention it later. It's going to be a great book.
No.
It's one of those anthologies where a lot of authors pile in and share tidbits, and I love working on those. And the worst part of this one is I said I would do it, and then I missed some emails, and when I caught up, it was too late.
I think it's good you shared that because a lot of people think that they're the only ones that kind of make mistakes like that. I assure you.
Oh,
you're not.
Gosh. Yeah, we don't have enough time.
That'll be season 4. That would take us into season 4. But one thing, I want to give a big shout out to Rachel Appel. I don't know if she listens to the show as a habit, but she had rejoined Microsoft, and she offered me the job to do the column after I tech reviewed a bunch of stuff. And so back then it was about UWP development and Windows development. So so a few years ago, I can get the exact date and time, but I switched it over to AI and data science. So based on kind of
Very
demand, which
cool.
was it was a fun experience. Writing is always very challenging, but it's
Hmm.
sad to see it go. So I don't know.
It really is. Yeah, I learned so much from that magazine, Frank. Not just tech editing your articles, but I did learn a ton doing that. But just over the years, and I've still got, stacks of old issues stored away in the attic, and there's sticky notes
Oh
sticking out of
yeah.
them that has like,
That was a classic. I
notes
mean, I
on
remember
things.
when I was writing um, my they sent an email to all the authors as well as personal phone calls. But I remember writing my first encounter with was the Microsoft Internet Developers Journal or something like that. I forget the exact name.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I remember picking up a copy of that because when I was at Barnes and Noble, before it became BarnesandNoble.com, they had switched from going with a Unix-based platform solution to what at the time was Windows NT based solution. So I picked that up. I
Wow,
was like, well,
that's a big jump.
it was a big jump, and thereby hangs a tale.
Hmm.
One day I will explain kind of the ridiculousness of that time period in Silicon Alley during the first .com boom. But
Wow.
but yeah, that was a big jump. It was pretty dramatic, and it was I just remember picking it up, saying this is actually written pretty well because at the time I was not a Microsoft fan, and not
Hmm.
very supportive of our CEO's decision. Um, but over time,
Right.
it kind of grew on me. I remember reading MSDN, 2001, and it was an interesting article. I mean, interesting magazine, like really well put together. So
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, I'd say a
it
flagship.
really was. It really was. So I don't know what's going to replace it, or what will come from the ashes, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yep,
So the
we
first
will see.
question, we're calling this kind of viewer mail, although we really don't have viewers. We'll call this listener mail. Listener
Listener
mail.
mail. I like that.
The
Yeah.
first question I got was last week. We spoke to Brent Ozar, and
Yeah.
if you do a search for his name, more often than not, you'll get a reference to something called NoLock. And I kind of
You
thought I knew what
can.
it was.
Yes.
It's definitely like a data engineering term. And do we have a data engineer in the house?
Let me look. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm here.
So for
You're a certified data
this
engineer,
is
Frank. I mean, the big data certification is really, I think, missing.
that one is
So
it's
it's
actually called data. Is it called data engineer? It's called something else, but effectively it's data engineering.
no big
Big data.
data.
That's right.
Something for big. Yeah. Yeah. It's a big data cert on edX, and I think you actually finished it
No, we
before
finished
I
at the same
did.
time. We worked on the
Uh,
same project. Yeah,
oh, did we
that was a
finish
project
that
you
one?
wanna.
Did we
We
work on
did.
that
That's the
one
one we worked
together?
on together.
That's right. We did. We did the final piece. But yeah, that's data engineering. So the show with Brent, if you haven't listened to it, um, make some time to listen to that show. Brent is a very interesting character. He's a master of marketing, and he's also a Microsoft certified master in SQL Server. It's a really interesting combination. He has a gift for teaching. I can't say enough nice things about it. I loved it. And he mentioned this NoLock, and I think I actually brought it up because I know how much he hates it. I mean, how much he just doesn't want people to use it. But and he's right. There are some dangers in
So
using
first
this now.
off, what is? So I
Essentially,
have two questions. What is it? And
sure, sure.
two, why would you use it? And I lied. There's actually a third question. How is his name associated with it? Because like
Okay.
if you do the Google auto suggest, if it actually came up like no lock, and I was like, that's kind of funny.
Okay.
So first off, let's go with I'll play the noob because I'm not. I actually had to ask you like after the show was launched. So what exactly is it? I think I know what it is, but let's start there. Like, what exactly is no lock?
Right. So NoLock is a table hint. And when you write a transact SQL statement, you can say select and then a list of column names. You can even do select star if you'd like to, and it works. And it's less, there's less impact nowadays on select star than there was in the past, but it's still not zero. And you want to put in column names, and then you say from, and then a table or a view name. And when you're doing a table name, you can say after the name of the table, you could place an alias or maybe just the table name itself. And you could say with, and then in parentheses, NoLock. And that's what it is. It is a table hint. It instructs the query engine in SQL Server to return the data that you're going after. If you've got a list of columns in a table, it'll bring back those list of columns from that table. And when you say with NoLock, it actually changes the way that it reads that data. So I want to roll back just a little bit here, Frank. There's an old principle in relational database engines called ACID, at ACID, and it's atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. That's what ACID means. And
now, for all you cool kids in the Cosmos DB NoSQL world, this does not necessarily apply. Just FYI. All right.
It's still there, right? But you can change. And what I love about
it's different, though.
It is different. And in the NoSQL, anything NoSQL, one of the big differences between that and relational databases or RDBMSs is that you can have you can play with consistency. So you can say it's eventually consistent. And Brett,
so in a case, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, though we do meander. That's what we do.
Yeah.
You would not want eventual consistency in like a bank or financial transaction database.
Most likely not, because and there's a reason.
But, right. So, but if you're doing like your Instagram feed or LinkedIn, if Andy, who may be in Farmville, sees my LinkedIn update 2 minutes after somebody in Singapore sees my update to LinkedIn, nobody gets hurt, nobody gets killed, nobody dies. But in a financial transaction, that could be very, very icky.
Absolutely, it could. So there's this idea about transactional versus non-transactional data storage and data movement, and it even comes into play in data engineering or integration. And just the idea behind NoLock is you're basically instructing the engine to bring you back the data that it has. I don't want to say this wrong, but it's not necessarily the current state of that data. There's a thing we call a dirty read in data warehousing. And without diving too deep into the mechanics, and again, I can't go but so deep into the mechanics of the SQL Server relational engine, but I can share with you that there's multiple states of this data before it reaches this state that we would call consistent. And it does it very, very quickly. And a lot of database masters like Brent and others, they make money by making that data consistent quicker. They make the data consistency, the data get written to the drives or the SAN or whatever the store is. They tune that so that it happens very, very quickly. And when that happens, now once you've got in a relational database, once the data becomes consistent, then you can go read that data and everybody gets the same answer to the same question. And keep in mind, a lot of this is about state management, Frank. And you did a lot. You just told a story about how you worked in the early days with BarnesandNoble.com. And back in the web days, and even now in the web days, there's a lot about this that you want to be decoupled. You want things to be stateless, and and a database is just the opposite of that. When you're talking about a relational database, it's the very definition of stateful, and so you can read data using NoLock, and you can get back inconsistent, non-current, dirty data. It's not accurate. And that's what makes it bad. And that's what the reason Brent's name shows up with that is he's written a lot and broken down, how to explain this. He and people that work with him and or used to work with him, they've broken these concepts down so that, data engineers like me can understand. So, one such person is Kendra Little, and we want Kendra on the show. She works for Redgate. I think the reason he hasn't been on the show so far is I've neglected to ask her. So,
well, for God's sake, don't ask on Twitter. Just kidding.
Yeah. Logs. Okay, yes, that's true. That's true. So, one day we're going to tell that story, but not today.
Here's a statement, and then if you're really clever, you'll figure it out. Andy, we need a bulletproof way not to get blocked on Twitter when we request somebody to join our show. That's all I'll say.
That's the second time you've said that.
I know.
Actually, you tweeted it.
I did tweet that. That's right, but I never said it on the actual show. That's right.
You didn't say it, and you're right. Kendra has. She works for Redgate. She's an evangelist, super smart, and she's really nice too. And she has a website called SQL Workbooks, SQLworkbooks.com. And the way I found it, I'm friends with Kendra, so she let me know early on she was doing this. But she has these nice short lessons. There's about a 3-minute lesson on the NoLock hint. And the way I found it was I went to Bengal and typed in SQL Server NoLock, and I believe it was like one of the top 2 or 3 responses. I saw SQL Workbooks. I knew it was Kendra. I went over there. And we'll put this in the show notes. We'll put the link to
So is this...
She does a marvelous job of describing.
So is the NoLock hint, is that unique to T-SQL or Transact SQL? And for those of you who don't know, T-SQL is the dialect of SQL associated with SQL Server.
That's correct. And as far as I know, the answer is yes, but I'm not qualified because I don't keep up with the other variations of... I've done a little PL SQL, that's Oracle's language. I've done some DB2. I've done some...
So it's not part of the ISO standard.
So I guess...
Or it may not be. Maybe.
I don't think it is. I'm not sure, and I could be wrong. I just, since I focus so much on SQL,
right. Well, I mean, it doesn't seem like something that it would be part of the ISO version. It seems to be wrong.
Right.
It seems like counter to the needs of, like, quote unquote, the standard.
Well, here's the reason why people use it in the first place is, especially when you're talking about relational database, lock escalation and lock management is a huge thing, and it's for, it's primarily for the consistency piece, but it begins to interfere with some of the other pieces of SQL Server. So if Frank, if I'm updating a table and the update is ongoing, when you try to read from that table, you try to execute a select statement against that table, there may be a lock that gets in the way. It's a very complex mechanism, especially now in 2019. But that's why locks exist. They exist so that, so I can't I can't be in the middle of an update statement and then you come along and you execute an update statement, and and we have to battle. That's part of the reason locks exist. While a table is being updated, or while there are even new rows being inserted, there are other operations that would just be a read that would be prevented by that. So you're trying to count the number of rows in a table, for instance, and there's a lock on that table. And again, I'm way oversimplifying this. And if you want to call me out on it, andy.leonard@entdna.com. Drop me a nasty a nasty gram that straightens me out. But the reason these exist is so we won't get bad answers back. And again, there are, there's locks at different levels, different artifacts inside of the database. It's a whole subscience of database tuning, and I am not a DBA, and I've probably proven that in something I've shared in the past few minutes. The reason I've used NoLock, though, is if there's a lock on that table, and I need to get to that data anyway. Maybe maybe the thing I'm trying to go after, maybe the field I'm trying to go after is just never updated. And in data warehousing, ETL, extract, transform, and load, it's not uncommon to go after something like something we call a surrogate key. So it's an ID that we're going to map to a value, or perhaps there's a reference, a piece of reference data, and it may be that other pieces of that row of data are being updated, and there's a lock on that table for that reason. But I'm confident, I have enough confidence that 99.9% of the time when I go after that reference data, the field I need or fields I need are not changing. They remain stable and constant. But, there's a lot of caveats in that statement that I just made. But I've done it. I've used NoLock. It speeds up my query at just a touch. And, and I've been able to retrieve that data and continue loading the data warehouse.
So if you're not really that concerned with like precision at a given moment, it sounds like one of those things where it's one of those options that you need to have it there, but you need to be very judicious in how you use it.
And that's absolutely true. And, I'll be honest, as more options have become available, like using different isolation levels, and also I'm trying to remember the CQRS. That's the acronym for having two databases, one that's just for writing to, and another that's just for reading. And then you manage the states of those. You do something in the middle, some sort of data engineering, data integration piece to keep those in sync as fast as possible. But CQRS is that way, and the key to making CQRS appealing, in my opinion, why there's two. Really, it's two keys. But I'm going to focus on what I would replace my NoLock strategy is that second database becomes read-only. The one I read from, that becomes a read-only cabinet. And right away, you do away with, in a relational database engine, with a lot of logging that's required if you're reading and writing to that database. If you set it to read only, the estimates I've heard is it's 25 to 30% faster just by making that change. So, the idea here is to present accurate data as fast as possible to business decision makers in a format that facilitates them making these decisions. You want to be able to do the analytics and present the graphics in such a way so that when they look at the picture, they instantly glean something about the state of their business. It's especially important when things are going really, really bad. You want to show them that as quickly as possible, and you want to give them as complete a picture as possible. That's where accuracy and speed come in. So that's what business intelligence and data analytics and all of the buzzwords that we can throw at this, now data science, that's really what that's all about. That's the purpose.
Interesting.
That we serve with this. And
well, that's good to know. That's I think that clears it up. So just to make sure that I fully understand it, it's the idea that if I need to know if there's a big transaction kind of pending on a database, and I just want to know how many rows, say for instance, are in the transaction or in the sales data table, right? I don't really, I just need a ballpark figure, right? Is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Is it, NoLock would be a good time to, that'd be a good reason to do that. Probably like caveman simple example, but I mean, I think it's a good example of like, I don't really care what's going on or what transactions are pending. I just want a quick answer. It doesn't have to be perfect. I need to be close enough.
Yeah, and Brent made he made a comment that when he first said it, I was listening to it as we were recording the show. I was kind of nodding my head and going, yeah, that's exactly right. Well, to our listeners that don't know this, sometimes I do the show notes, and I'll go and play the show back after it goes live, or sometimes before it goes live, and I'll start capturing comments and filling in, links and stuff like that, like I'm going to do for this show. And I was listening to that comment again, and I thought, That's probably the best disguised snark I've heard in a long
Yeah.
time. He talked about it. I forget. He used the phrase, I think, twice about business executives making bad decisions.
Yes.
That was in there.
I heard that, and I
twice.
didn't. I edit the shows. That's generally how the workflow goes. I edit, and Andy does show notes.
Mhm.
And the reason why those are two separate gigs is because by the time you're done editing, you've heard it enough times, you don't want to hear it again. So when I was going through that, I'm like, I can't tell. Was he serious or was that snark? I honestly could not tell because it could have gone either way, which I think is just
Yeah, it
kind of
could.
shows his genius, actually, because it's a true genius that
I agree.
there was a saying like someone who's really talented can tell you to go to hell and then you'd look forward to go to the trip. Like it was just something like that. I think it's an old Irish proverb or something like
Yep.
that. But
I think you're right.
So with that, I think that was I think we kind of answered that question, hopefully. If not, we're happy to do another viewer mail show, listener mail.
Yep. And remember, you can email Andy and straighten me out.
Straighten him out.
I'm sure I didn't do it justice. I need it.
Before you send that nastygram, go check out Kendra's write-up on this. Because
it's actually
it's a video. Oh.
3-minute video.
Even better.
Yeah, 3 minutes of your day. Listen to it. Learn from. And I'm pretty sure. I'm not positive. Kendra may also be a Microsoft Certified Master in SQL Server. She's smart, and she does a really good job with communicating. So listen to her.
Cool. So then our next round of questions has us. It's almost, and I was going to do a nice, clever little segue where you were talking about, having the raw data and then having the visualizations kind of like to the C-suite. And I was like, that sounds like a soup to nuts conversation. And that would have been a great segue
into
over to basically the Data Soup Virtual Summit. So for those of you who don't know, we're hosting our first virtual summit on basically, we're calling it the data engineering kind of flavor, right? Because it's soup, get it? The graphics will look cool. I promise you that. So what we're calling this is the Data Soup Virtual Summit, and you'll notice that when we do the Campbell's-esque soup can, it has data engineering flavor. And what this one is really going to be, because it's a virtual summit, right? We don't have to pay for a facility. There's a lot of things we don't have to worry about. We don't have to worry about meals. We don't have to worry about food and things like that. So one of the things that came up, and we are going to go on another meander, and I'm going to try to keep it short on the meander. When Andy and I met up in Northern Virginia, about almost 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
I was telling him a story about this cool word I heard. It was called cryptonesia. And long story short, it was from Arthur C. Clarke had a TV show on one of the cable networks. I think it was originally a BBC production that was broadcast here on one of the cable networks that used to be educational, but now are all about swamp people, Honey Boo Boo, and like other 90-day fiancés, right? It was on one of those channels, and but basically he had a thing, and one of the shows, what was unique about it, he would cover kind of, I think it was called Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, and he would cover kind of like X-Files type phenomena, but he'd do it with a scientific eye. And the reason why I really like his show, aside from him being Arthur C. Clarke, was like he wouldn't always dismiss things offhand, right? Most of the time he would, right? Like, come on, aliens built the pyramids, like, really? You kind of do that. But every once in a while I'd be like, I can't find any scientific reason to explain this, but it doesn't mean, I can't, it doesn't mean it's not happening, right? That was kind of this thing. But one of the ideas he posited for one of the phenomena he encountered was something called cryptonesia, which means you remember something, but you don't remember where you heard it. So with that sidetrack kind of out of the way, As you know, I listen to a lot of audiobooks and I read a lot of books. My target for this year is 60 books. I'm at 31 as of today.
Nice.
The John D. Rockefeller book has really delayed me.
I was going to say, caveat on Titan.
Right. It's a 35-hour book, and my average like listening time is about 35 hours. So like it basically sucked up the whole month. So
wow.
Fascinating book. Highly recommended. It is worth the 35 hours, even if it screws up my little metric.
Sure.
But one of the analogies I remember hearing, and I can't remember which book it was because all the ideas after a while kind of merged together into like one blur. So there was this.
You were saying that.
Yeah, and that's basically Kryptonesia. I remember. This is not my original idea, but I do remember hearing it, and I don't remember. Right. Although Kryptonesia would be, I really don't remember, and I think it was my idea. I think someone's going to call me out on that. I know that.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. But anyway, the point is that there was one story about how factories used to be water powered, right? They would always be by a water, and there'd be like a big water wheel, right? And all the power for all the machines in the factory would come off that one shaft in the middle of the factory.
Right.
Right. As factories became electrified, the power could be anywhere in the building, right? As long as you ran a wire to it. But for at least 10 years, maybe even a generation of factory kind of designers, they would always put things in that one line, right? It took a generation for them to realize, oh yeah, we're not tied to this old paradigm anymore, right? It was the technology shift happened before the mind shift.
Interesting.
The same holds true, and you're like, somebody's listening right now, like, where is he going with this one? Hold on. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to bring it back right now. We're calling it a virtual summit, and there's a lot of these, right? This is kind of like the hot new thing. I think there's going to be a Microsoft Office one in September. We're doing ours in August. Just saying. But there's already been a number of these, and they use the term virtual summit, even though it's not confined to a particular time. It's not confined to a particular place. So the whole notion of what it means to be a summit is a bit like that factory, right? Like we're not confined to being right off that shaft, if you will. And that shaft is one bad mother.
Shut your mouth.
Talking about shaft. All right, so that joke is a reward for people who were on that little sidetrack there. But we're not, because we're not tied to a physical location or a particular point in time. The key is that there's a lot of confusion with a lot of the terms. So one of the things I've been getting is, oh, I'd love to attend, but I'm on vacation that week.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's why I've been changing kind of our marketing tweets and things like that to say instead of takes place on this point in time.
Yes.
I'm saying it launches this point in time.
That's more accurate because explain why that's more accurate.
It's more accurate because what we're doing with a lot of these sessions is because it's virtual. We don't have to fly Reza in from New Zealand, right? And have him present and then fly him home, right? So that's a considered cost savings for us. But we're able to capture kind of global talent. Catherine from Norway, although she's in the U.S. a lot, so if we timed it right, we're not confined to time or space, which sounds very science fiction. But what we're doing actually for this first one, future ones, I think we're going to do live streams, and we still may do kind of like the opening remarks and the closing remarks as a live feed. I don't think Andy knows that yet, but
are we?
I've not given up on that. But as of now, everything is going to be pre-recorded. So they're going to pre-record their sessions, and we'll have a way, probably a Slack channel, maybe the Facebook group. I don't know yet. Being totally transparent, because this is experimental, right? There are a very precious few best practices for a virtual summit,
right?
And almost none for a technology virtual summit. So we are among the cutting edge in this. So that's why we're kind of like, we kind of stumbled out of the gate, getting this off the ground.
Yep.
So we are going to continue. We're going to do this. We're going to take the lessons we learned from the first one, rather than wait until it's perfect.
Right.
And then we're going to have a series of these. But because they're virtual, it doesn't matter. Like if you're on vacation the whole month of August, it doesn't matter. We're going to have the material online. At least, I think as of now, it's stated at least till November. I'm probably just going to make it till the end of 2019, honestly, at this point.
So
and
people
you heard it
can
here.
sign up at any time.
Right.
And then go listen to the presentations from the Data Soup Virtual Summit.
Exactly.
And if they have questions, we're going to have someplace, either Slack or the Facebook page, where they can come ask those questions, and then the presenters will answer them.
Exactly. And I think even Catherine says that she wants to be there, like on her computer, wherever she is in the world, because she travels a lot, answering those questions live.
That's pretty cool. Now, I'm sure, like it's the middle of Rezos night.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we both were like, well, don't feel like you have to do it. But again,
right.
We are learning from this. We're going to learn as much from this, I think, as our audience is going to learn from it.
I'm sure.
What the real key advantage here is that because the cost of doing this, and there is a cost to do it, right? That's why we're charging admission. The cost of doing this is low enough that we can just say, you know what? We'll have a whole day of sessions just on Cosmos DB. Just Cosmos DB. Right? If we really wanted to, I suppose we could have an entire day of sessions just on NoLock. Whether or not that's a good idea, we'll see. But I mean, the idea is we can niche down. That's ultimately our vision here.
Right.
Is we can niche down and provide real value. Because you go to a big conference like Build. I love Build. I go if I can. But those are general sessions, right? There's sessions all the way from data science and AI all the way down to, virtual reality and mixed reality, or, developing stuff in Xamarin. No knock on any of those technologies. But I personally am only interested in one small subset of things. Right. And this is the thought of having just a full day conference just on Cosmos DB in a physical thing at a big convention center is just unthinkable. It's just not economically feasible, I think.
Right.
But because it's virtual, we can do that. So hopefully,
I'm digging.
Sorry, what?
I said I'm digging.
Awesome. We are super excited, and you spell that OUPER. Well, we're going to try to make that a thing. All right, I'm going to try to make that a thing. But hopefully that answers the questions we've been having. So the primary thing is, doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter when you watch it, because it's basically going to be available from August 14th until the end of the year. I'll make the adjustment now, or after the recording is done. Originally it was going to be just for 90 days, but I think just to be good to our people who are taking a chance on our experiment here, I want to make sure the first one goes off well, and then we'll figure out other stuff for future ones. So hopefully that answers the questions. It's a virtual summit. You don't have to watch it when they premiere, because ultimately, basically what we're doing is we're uploading these things and we're premiering them kind of in sequence. So if you want to experience it like you were like watching something live, totally can do that. If you don't want to do it and you want to do like how I watched Game of Thrones, I basically binge watched it, the first 5 seasons after, basically because I had a free HBO for like 90 days.
Cool.
But you can do it that way too. Though I would recommend buying it before like December, so you have, the sooner you buy, the longer the time you have to use it.
True.
So hopefully that clears things up.
I think it's a fantastic idea, Frank. And for those who, people don't know, because it was stuff you and I talked about. We've been talking about different kinds of events since, back in the day. And we mentioned this on another show. It's actually the season 3 opener here with JLD. When we were talking before that, Frank and I have been organizing events since 2005. So, we got experience with this, and we were thinking about doing something more like the traditional type event, and we wanted to. And as we work through it, there's just a lot of stuff that has to go right,
Right.
to
And
do that. It's not
yeah,
easy.
exactly. And the Azure Data Fest folks, particularly here in the East Coast, they do a really good job of doing what we would want to do.
They do.
So,
They do that
right, they
already.
do that already. They do a good job, and there's plenty of options to do that. So then, I kind of did my thought experiment of well, how could we take events to the next level? Right? Yeah, you could do webcasts and stuff like that, but that's not quite the same, right? So
True.
what's kind of the next level? And when I kind of stumbled across the notion of virtual summits, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. And I think I sent it to you, and I think we both had the same reactions to him. We should do one of these.
Yeah,
And
that's right. Let's try
here we
this
are. So we have that. One of the interesting things that we're doing is kind of an experiment, and this has caused a lot of confusion too. Is that when you buy a ticket, we obviously have discount codes. If you use data driven, although by the time this goes live, it'll be 50%, not 70%.
Right. It was 70%.
Yep, pays to listen.
That's it. Should have listened earlier.
But still, I mean, 50% is still the base price is $25, so we're still looking at like $12.50. Still a good deal. So hopefully that clears kind of up this thing. It is a new animal. Don't feel bad for being confused. I assure you, we're as confused as you are, maybe more.
Yeah.
Certainly, originally we were going to do this a month ago.
Yes.
But for reasons numerous, varied and sundried, it didn't happen. Part of it was the confusion. Part of it is we're actually delivering this through a SaaS platform that itself was built to support actually with a blogging conference, blogging virtual summit. And their UX is getting better every day. And that's all I'll say there. I don't want to trash them because they've been nice people. But it's clearly it's new for them too. So it's more than a webinar, but if it helps you mentally process it, think of it as kind of like a tag team webinar. I mean, that's another great way to look at it. So it's a little more than a webinar, less than an actual physical summit. And you're right, Andy and I have been talking about doing something like this again. Azure Data Fest does it so well, we didn't want to compete, and I don't want to add things to the market or anything where I'm not adding really good value to it, Which is why if you go back to like 2 summers ago, I did the daily update of news in the data science and AI space. But then I realized I wasn't adding value, I was adding to the noise. And then I decided to do that type of stuff on my blog, Frank's World, which I do kind of distill. And that I think those types of things work better for print than they do audio.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out franksworld.com, which is the URL for Frank's World of Data Science.
That's right.
You should check that out.
And
what we're doing, I'd say this about what we've done, and kind of by way of, Frank's alluded to us experimenting and trying and testing. There's a concept in business that goes along with this. If you're familiar with the lean manufacturing, lean software development, it's that philosophy, and the whole idea behind a minimally viable product is it's kind of like ready, fire, aim, and we're doing a little bit of that. So don't be thrown. And by the way, I encountered that phrase first in manufacturing, reading books back in the early '80s.
So how did you read before there was a Kindle?
There was these great strange things with. It starts with trees.
So, which I think that iterative process really ties into the third question we're going to tackle. And I don't know if we're going to hit it quite to the degree that the listener asked, but we will try. Speed is better than, and perfectly done fast is better than perfectly done in the distance. So the question I
Sure.
got from one of our loyal listeners, his name is Bob, in the UK. So no,
Hi, Bob.
hi Bob, no last name because of GDPR. All right. Um, GDPR jokes don't get quite the laughter they used to, do they?
Afraid not.
Anyway, so his question was, what's the science aspect of data science? And he said his dad was a physicist, and there's a whole notion inside the data, inside science, where you have the
Hmm.
scientific method, right? Where you start off with a hypothesis, you come up with some theories, and then you test your theories, and then you observe the results. And then what you do is you kind of go back and alter your hypothesis and come up with new theories and new tests, and it's an iterative process, right? So I thought that iterative
It's
process of what we're doing with lean manufacturing, or this kind of try, see what works, see what doesn't, and adjust and adapt and evolve, is also a very iterative process. So I think
absolutely.
um, so his question was really along the lines of, how much science is there in data science versus how much is it marketing and hype? And I think the bad news,
That's a fair
that's a
question.
great question, right? Because like, how much of this
Yeah,
is, and the term science is also so misused in day-to-day speech.
it really is.
Um,
Yeah.
so the notion of quote unquote pure science, where you have an idea and you test it and you observe the results and then go back and change it. I like Adam Savage's
Hmm.
definition that I heard on. He was one of the MythBusters,
Hmm.
and at one point they were going to do something like crazy ridiculous, which kind of point of the show. He stopped, turned to the camera, and said, "Remember, kids, if you don't write it down, it's not science. But if you write it down, you can do all sorts of crazy things." I'm paraphrasing here. So I encourage when I talk to enterprise teams, or just teams of people, I encourage them to be playful with their data. There's actually a data point way back where you need to be playful with your data.
Hmm.
So I was talking to
Absolutely.
this one team, and they were like, this data is so bad, we can't get a model off it, and they were complaining about it. I'm like, well, why don't you just drop that data and then try adding this other stuff in and see what happens? They were like, oh no, we can't do that.
Right.
You know, and I was like, hold up. Why can't you do that? Well, management this. I was like, okay, this matter. You have to take this. You have to approach. You have to put the science back in the data science here, right? You have to
That's right.
experiment, tweak, play with the data, see what you get. If it's a complete flop, that's fine, and that didn't work. If it happens to predict when the predictive maintenance thing that they were trying to get, then that's a win. So then you can go to management like, well, when we use the data you told us to use, we got 40% accuracy. When we did this and we dropped this, we got 89% accuracy. How do you want to go with that? Like, how do you want to go forward with that? Like, it doesn't have to be this as confrontational as I just said it, but you're not also locked in the
Right.
traditional world of kind of enterprise IT, where somebody pontificates from a corner office on the top floor, and then it kind of rolls downhill.
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
have to be that way. It'll, with when being very playful with the data, and you're not going to give a daily report of like, well, hey, I tweaked this hyperparameter, and look what happened. You're not going to be that. I mean, realistically, it's not going to happen. But if you approach it
Right.
from the point of view of let's be experimental, you can go a lot further.
Uh-huh.
So,
You
but
know, Frank, this reminds me of some of the crazy things I've heard. So one thing we say in data is that correlation does not equal
right,
causation. You know, it's an easy mistake to make, especially for people with an engineering mindset. There's a term for seeing patterns everywhere. I heard it again recently, and it's like whether they're there or not, you see them. And I'm guilty of that, hands down. I am. But over time, I've gotten better at doing, detecting false positives and more, being better able to classify stuff. But I find it fascinating these correlations between the March Madness predictive analytics that occur, with college basketball every year, and the
I've heard
Jersey
of that.
colors.
There
Have you
is a
seen
website,
that?
and we'll have to put it in the show notes, but it's called
Yeah.
Spurious Correlations.
Yes.
And it turns out that the number of, I forget what it is, but the number of Nicolas Cage movies also is somehow, somehow related to recalls of wheelchair parts or something like completely not related.
Wow. Well, and there's a group of people that I'm not sure if they're still doing it anymore or not. I hope I hope that they do because it's hilarious. And they've done this at many events. Microsoft's people, engineers, and they called it
Oh, that sounds cool.
the BI Power Hour, and they would feature some of the spurious correlations. The one I found hilarious a few years ago was they were talking about shark attacks and and the location data recorded for the shark attack, and some of them were in the Midwest. And so I'm not making this up, and they basically came away with land sharks. That has to be the answer. So
So, all right, so
land
I
sharks
found the
may be in
website,
there in spurious correlations. I'm
and here
not
it is.
sure,
So here's
but
a correlation. We'll put it in the show
okay.
notes, but it's basically number of people who drowned by falling into a pool has a correlation with films Nicolas Cage has appeared in.
I'm going to the site now. I
It's
gotta look at
the
this.
second one down.
I'm with you.
It's just so bizarre that you have to
Let me put this back.
But I mean, I think that's one of the things that when I first got into this, when I first did statistics and studied that again, and I was like, that was that aha moment of, wow, this is, correlation is not causation. Could there be things in the middle that can kind of explain it?
Right.
Maybe there could be, right? But those are kind of the things that like the Freakonomics blog and podcast is about, right? Like the kind of, number of, like, there's another one further down the list, a divorce rate in Maine with per capita consumption of margarine. Like, maybe margarine's cheaper and divorce rates are, one big driver for divorce is financial trouble, right? So maybe like by going to, I'm making this up. This is, I don't know, but there could be something invisible there. I'm not saying there's anything,
right.
Anything to do with Nicolas Cage and
Right.
drowning in pools, but I mean, that's kind of like the realm of the Freakonomics blog and anything by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about things that you wouldn't necessarily would be connected, but there is this whole long series of chains of events that, yeah, maybe there is.
Yep. It could be, and it's and that happens in science other than data science. I mean, the statistics, wherever you find statistics, you're going to find this opportunity for a false correlation or a misidentification of a causation, and this is why, in my humble opinion, good science is iterative, and it's about prove it's about failing to prove your theory wrong
This is
way
true.
more than it's about proving your theory right. And you know me, Frank. I'll get on my soapbox here any minute because it bothers me when I see science, especially science that's applied to policy.
Right. So, I mean, I would say is that whenever I hear a study now, particularly when I was studying statistics, not so much now, I've kind of mellowed a bit, but I'll hear like a study. I'm like, oh yeah, what's the p-value?
Yeah.
Like I'll be listening to like the radio, then the news comes on, and like they'll be like, oh, a new study suggests that, and I'm like, oh yeah, what's the p-value on that? But I mean, I think we all have to take results of these studies with a grain of salt. There was the post
Right.
around April Fool's Day this year where they said something to the effect of, anything you see today, you should not take it face value, investigate it and figure out what's really going on, and then there was like this ellipsis, and it was like, just like you should any other day of the year. Which is right. You know,
these days.
So hopefully, Bob, we answered your question.
I totally agree.
I'm sorry, Andy, I cut you off.
Yeah, I hope so. That's okay. I hope we did, Bob. But it's really fair question. I think, you know, I think the gist of it is that the term science has been co-opted, and I would say it has evolved, but
devolved,
I really don't think
maybe
that's the right word.
Debased.
I think it has been
Debased.
Maybe devolved.
It's been debased.
Yeah, it hasn't been a good thing.
Particularly, right. And you know, if you read any of the keto books or the Atkins book, he has some choice words. Dr. Atkins in his first book on his diet, he has some choice words for kind of how the what became the dietary guidelines for Americans, how that kind of co-opted science to make that happen. And there's a
Absolutely.
fairly non-controversial or least controversial way to see where policy and science, when they mix, you don't get science. Science is kind of washed out. So,
Agreed.
and if you look at the consequences of it, right? When those dietary guidelines came out, the obesity rates prior to that and post that, there's no comparison. But this is not a keto podcast. One day maybe there will be.
No, it isn't. But you know, one day. But we talked about we talked about some of the ways that science is misapplied, and now it's my turn to totally forget the rest of my
happens to the best of us. All right, so with that, hopefully we answered all your questions. If you have any more questions, you have Andy's email address, and I am frank.lavinia@gmail.com. You can always hit me up on Twitter. I'm even on Instagram too, as @FranksWorldTV. And
Cool.
Yeah, so I don't think we're that hard to find. Find us on LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm on Twitter as @TabletTier. And you are @Andy Leonard, right? Awesome. So with that, if we didn't answer your question quite to your satisfaction, we can do another one of these. If we did, give us a thumbs up, and be sure to give us a nice rating on iTunes and or Spotify. Spotify's starting to take a lot of the gravitas away from iTunes, and I once again lost my train of thought. So with that, hopefully we answered your question. I'm going to say that again. So if you have any more questions or you're confused about anything about this virtual summit, because it is kind of a new thing for us, and also look at the show notes, because Andy's going to put the article/video from Kendra about NoLock, and go to datasoupsummit.com. Make sure to enter code DATADRIVEN for a 50% discount. Is that it? That's all I got.
That's it.
Awesome. Well, you have a great day, and let's let the nice British lady end the show.
Thanks for listening to Data Driven. Don't just listen. Become a data driver by going to datadriven.tv to sign up to join the community, access to special events, tips and tricks, and more. Sign up today at datadriven.tv.